What's going on, A2D Nation? Welcome to the Strike Zone tonight. Matt Downing here again. We got a great show again this week for you guys. I do, at least. But yeah, another great show this week, guys. Hope everyone had a great weekend. As the weather gets warmer here, and as hopefully the Phillies offense can get rolling. Hopefully the pitching can by some miracle start to improve, because it's been absolutely brutal so far for the Phillies pitching as of late. So let's get into tonight, and then we're definitely going to get into the pitching tonight. But yeah, after the this weekend series with the Dodgers, Sunday I went to the game, Father Appreciation Day with my dad. Shout out to my dad. We went, and yeah, it was a great time. Great game. Phillies won 7-3. So got to see Nick hit the home run. Yeah, and Tajon Walker pitched well. Wanted that sixth inning. I really wish he, I was rooting for him, but yeah, some really good performances on Sunday, and obviously, definitely we'll get into last night, right? With kicking off the series with the Diamondbacks. Now, the Phillies unfortunately fell into one of the weirder games that you'll see of the season, probably for the Phillies last night, losing 9-8. In which we thought that for a second, maybe more than a second, thanks to the lack of replay for the initial part, we thought the Phillies had won last night, but it turns out they did not. But yeah, so the Phillies, heartbreaker last night. JT obviously hitting for the cycle. Huge congrats to him. That was just one heck of a performance. But Phillies dropped the opener against the Diamondbacks. But on the bump tonight, Zack Wheeler. Hopefully the Phillies can get back on track, and we'll definitely get into previewing the rest of this Diamondback series and getting into what happened last night as well. And really, the big question is for me right now, and for I think a lot of Phillies fans, Aaron Nola coming up on the trade deadline. Is it time for the Phillies to start thinking about trading Aaron Nola? And that's what I want to know tonight. The Phillies should consider trading Aaron Nola, and I'm definitely going to get into that tonight because been a disappointment this year. We all know it. We've all seen it. It just has gotten to this point where it looks like the Phillies are not going to be re-signing him. So let's see. We'll get into that later. But yeah, so that'll be on tap for tonight. And then obviously I'll finish off with my fantasy stats of the week, start to the week. So let's get into the strike zone tonight.
Oh my God! I'm embarrassed! He's flying! Welcome in. It's almost time.
All right. So what's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Strike Zone this week. Got a great show for you guys this week. Lots to talk about with the Phillies as the bats are getting hot. The pitching on every fifth day is not. Just came up with that right now, so that was pretty damn good. But hey, I gotta have fun, right? So yeah, well, the Phillies unfortunately kicking off against one of the bigger surprise teams, I think, of the MLB season that now everyone is really taking notice of, is the Arizona Diamondbacks, and a team that the Phillies have really struggled against in recent years playing down in Arizona. It's definitely been a problem for them for a while now. But yeah, going into last night's series, definitely, how confident can you really be, right, with another bullpen game on tap last night? And the results went as pretty much as you would expect, right, for another bullpen game for the Phillies. And really, this is the story of the season right now for the Phillies, and really, this is the one that we need to be talking about the most. Obviously, yes, the pitching, the starting pitching, has been a huge disappointment. The biggest disappointment throughout the entire Phillies roster has been the pitching, but more specifically, like the fifth starter spot, right? I mean, this is beyond unacceptable at this point for the Phillies, right? Like, let me just read you some of these stats going in with the fifth starter spot right now. Hold on. I have it. I got it. There it is. Okay. Yeah, so right now with the Phillies, I mean, this is unbelievable what the Phillies are continuing to put up with. And I just talked about it, 2 weeks ago, about the Phillies possibly bringing up a young guy, right? Griff McCary. That was the guy I highlighted from the Phillies, and he just went 5 shutout innings in his last start. a couple days ago for Reading again. 5 shutout innings, 8 strikeouts. So another great performance by him. Still down in the minor leagues though, but with no sign of coming up anytime soon whatsoever. And that's the most baffling thing I think with the Phillies right now. Right now, I would say is that just the lack of urgency to go out and find a 5th starter. Because I know, I mean, at this point with Matt Strahm, right? Like, okay, Matt Strahm, yeah, he's starting to. He has not been pitching well as of late. Like he's starting to unravel a little bit. Like his ERA has been going up his last couple starts, but at this point, like yes, he's not supposed to be the starter, right? So at some point, right, this was going to happen with him, right? Like you were not expecting Matt Strahm to be your 5th starter. Like that's not what he was signed to be. And the fact now is that you're going to put him out there, and you're only going to put him out there for maybe 3 innings. I mean, that's what, I mean, at the most, that's what you can be expected from these guys, right? Is just 3 innings, 4 innings from the start. I mean, no, really, like if you're having a starter go in, he's not going to be going more than 2 to 3 innings. I mean, that's your hope is to get 3, but like that's just not sustainable when you expect to have 5 more guys at least come in throughout the rest of the night. Because at this point, the Phillies don't have the arms for the initial part of the bullpen game, right? Like say, like, you know, with so the back half of the bullpen, they've been inconsistent, but for the most part, they've been pretty good, right? Like Alvarado has just come back. He's going to get back into his groove, right? Like you expect him to take over the closer role again at some point. And then Craig Kimbrell, like he's going to be good at times, and he's going to be just absolutely wild at times too. And you just, you know, you're going to have to take those, right? I mean, that's just with closer spots, like you're going to have to take those games where you're going to have the blow ups, right? Like that's just the way it goes. I mean, gone are the days of Mariano Rivera and, you know, those guys that where you can really expect that, you know, Trevor Hoffman's that you can get K-Rods like that, you can get 40 plus saves a year from guys like that. Like a lot of teams don't have 40, 50 save guys anymore like that. There are few and far in between. And for the most part, most teams don't have it. And the Phillies certainly don't have a 40 save guy on this team. We haven't had one since Brad Lidge. So what we got right now is with Craig Kimbrell and Craig Kimbrell. There it is. I can't say Craig Kimbrell's name like so much of the time when I try and talk fast with him. Craig Kimbrell. There you go. And then Jose Alvarado. Those are your 2 back end guys. And then Sir Anthony, Gregory Soto. Gregory Soto's been very hit or miss. His ERA is over 5 right now. Sir Anthony's over 4. So I mean, Sir Anthony's just under 4. But yeah, for the most part, yeah. So LeBron James, there you go. Apparently he, hey, thanks, LeBron. Hell no. Well, I thought you'd be in like Cancun or something. So I guess you have nothing better to do right now than be online and talk to random people. So there you go. Yeah. LeBron in the chat. Thank you. Yeah. Billy Bluebills. Yeah. That is pretty funny. Yeah. Well, welcome LeBron, I guess. God, I wish it was LeBron. I tell you, I wouldn't be prepared. I'd have to keep it PG, but for this show. But I would love to talk to that guy. Let me tell you. But anyway, that would be another show. So anyway, but shout out to him. But going back to what I was saying. Yeah, so you got Alvarado and Kimbrell in the back end, and then with Sir Anthony and Soto, like those guys are not going to be getting you more than one inning at a time, right? Like that's not what you expect from those guys. So this is so funny. LeBron's in the chat right now. Don't come to the Sixers. Yeah, I agree with that, Cole. Yeah, definitely. That's it's not what we need. Yeah, we don't need that guy. So we got enough problems as is on that team without that another circus coming to town. So yeah, thanks. Definitely, I agree with that one. Agreed. # agree on that. So, but yeah, so you got that. Like you're not expecting those guys to get more than 1 inning per outing, right? Like that's they're not going to go multi innings per appearance. So like you got to figure out a way to get these initial guys, and the Phillies have just had the worst, I mean, just revolving door of just terrible performances from these quote unquote like relief guys, long relief guys, apparently that we're supposed to have. I mean, it's been an absolute joke. I mean, Connor Brogdon just was defeated, which I was kind of surprised about that with Connor Brogdon, because I mean, I've never been a big Brogdon fan, but he certainly was not the worst in that bullpen. So I'm kind of surprised by that. But yeah, I mean, we're struggling to get relief at the top of the bullpen right now. Because you can't get to Alvarado and those guys when you're giving up, 8 runs, 9 runs throughout the bullpen game, and even when your starters giving up, when you're putting the team in a hole, 4 runs, Dylan Covey, like the Braves game, right? Or what was it, 7 runs that first inning, 6 runs, 7 runs that first inning. Like when you're putting these guys out there, and like there's really you're literally putting them out there, and they're gonna get they're gonna get shelled. I mean, you're putting these guys out there against the Braves, against the Diamondbacks. You're putting these 5th starter games. You're setting these games up against the top teams in the National League. So you're basically just throwing a game away. At this point, that is essentially what the Phillies have been doing, and the stats kind of prove that, because in the 5th starter spot this year, let me read you these stats. These are kind of mind blowing. I just saw these today. Phillies are 2-10 in games started by either Bailey Falter, who was like 0-7, or any of the bullpen games they've replaced him with any bullpen game up to this point. So their winning percentage in the 5th starter games right now is 167. So just for imagination's sake, if they were 6-6 in that spot in the rotation right now, if they were just like 500 in the 5th starter spot, the Phillies could be 36-30 right now. And instead of being the 5th spot in the wild card, they'd be the 1 spot right behind the Dodgers. They'd be like 1 game out of the Dodgers, and they'd only be like 4 games behind the Braves if they had that difference in the 5th starter spot right now. So they would actually just think about that right there, right? We'd only be 4 games behind the Braves right now if we were just 500 in the 5th starter spot. So when you put it in like those terms, right? Like we're not looking for all-star. Obviously, we're not even looking for like anything more than ordinary. Like we're just looking for a guy that can go in there and at least give you 5 innings. Like that's what we need. Like, and the fact that like you're going to tell me like that the Phillies are okay with just throwing these random Dylan Covey. I mean, like these random guys. I mean, no, I'm not going to rip on Matt Strahm, but like at some point it's going to get to the point like we're Hoffman and Marte just got optioned because his ERA was like freaking 8. And we're bringing up Luis Ortiz, another reliever. Like, oh great, like here we go again. But yeah, it's just I'm getting tired of these games where the Phillies are just literally putting and you're putting your offense in a hole every time, right? Like when you're having these guys go out there. I mean, realistically, can you really expect these guys to give you what 2 runs, under 2 runs? Like you want to like limit, like you actually are expecting them to go out and over the course of what 7 innings, like, realistically before you get to, Alvarado or Kimbrel and like, the back part, like you're expecting them to go 7 innings with about 5 or 6 guys used and just hold it to under 2 runs. I mean, the Phillies bullpen is definitely better than it has been in past years, but they're not built to do that, right? Like the Phillies bullpen is definitely not that good. They're not good enough where they have to be able to do that, right? So that's the thing that really is starting to baffle me, is that we keep doing it, right? Like and Rob Thompson, who's starting to get on my nerves with this 5th starter talk. Like he's just like, well, last night, I mean, there's just still the even keel. Like there's no desire or there's no like urgency, it looks like, to find a 5th starter right now. And that's just absolutely, I can't believe that, because in this day and age where, MLB teams are just perfectly fine with like having these bullpen games now, and basically like just chalking it up to fate, and just, hey, it's like, I mean, it's really like roulette at that point. Like when you're putting these guys out there, right? Like you're throwing all these guys out there, like one of them is going to shoot you, right? Like, I mean, one of them is going to get you. So it's just not realistic for the Phillies that, I mean, at some point, when are we going to address this issue, right? At some point, we're going to have to come to a head and be like, okay, like we can't keep doing this every other series where we're basically just giving a game away, right? Like that's what we are at right now. And I don't really see the urgency from the Phillies. And that's what's the most concerning part. And especially from like, and look who we have with the Phillies. It's Middleton and Diamond Dave, right? Like that's who's running the show. And yeah, Middleton's got to be on the phone. Something we can't keep digging ourselves a deeper hole. Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I mean, look at those stats, right? Cool. Like 2-10 right now in the 5th starter spot. Like that's, I mean, like if just like 5 of those games is different, like that's a huge difference right now in the standings for us right now. So like, and this division is going to be like, if we can just get if we can just start to get over 500 and start to turn the corner and start actually playing consistent baseball where we're just winning at least series and sweeping a series, every other series or something like that. But you got to be consistently winning these series. And that's what the Phillies have not been able to do. So, and at some point, the fifth starter spot has to be addressed, right? Like this can't continue. And like I said 2 weeks ago when I was talking about it with Griff McCary, like we have guys down. We have to have like some desire to bring one of these guys up. And like and with Andrew Painter, like Lord only knows when he's going to play. Like I don't even expect him. Like I said, like don't even expect him this year at this point because I don't know if that guy's going to need Tommy John surgery. I mean, I don't know for sure because they've been so like avoiding talking about his injury, and that's very concerning. So let me just so that's what's very concerning right now. So we'll have to see we'll have to see going forward here because obviously with the trade deadline coming up, the Phillies are definitely going to have to be making moves because they're going to have to make some type of move. And like really, like when you look at the roster right now, it's like what can they really do, right? And of course, that the big thing is Aaron Nola with that. So I'm going to get into that right after talk about the Diamondback series this night. Blah, 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 blah. Easy for me to say. So let me get into the Diamondback series first, and then I will definitely get into Aaron Nola and the trade deadline because it's definitely something. So just to ponder that because we're definitely going to come back to that. So, but yeah, let's get into the Diamondbacks game last night, right? Like so. Like I just said with the bullpen game, I mean, it got off to a rocky start and it was very weird. That was especially when the manager on the Diamondbacks, I mean, it was so bizarre. I mean, obviously Corbin Carroll gets hit twice, right? And Corbin Carroll, if you haven't watched this guy, I mean, this dude is absolutely legit. He's one of the best players. I'm going to highlight him later, maybe in the fantasy section, but he is, this guy is unbelievable. He's playing absolutely just consistent, unbelievable baseball right now as a rookie. Overwhelming favorite to win Rookie of the Year right now. But he was hit twice by Matt Strahm last night, and the Diamondbacks manager, he thought that it was actually intentional, and he got pretty heated about it. I mean, he was as charged up and ready, like he was ready to go with some of the Phillies, and it was kind of interesting because like we really haven't had like. I mean, they've owned us down there. I mean, let's face it, right? They've owned us down there the last couple seasons, but there really wasn't anything like that. It seemed precedent that he would think that we're trying to hit him, and especially like Matt Strahm, and JT, especially JT Realmuto, and like that JT was like JT didn't fall for the crap. Like that's why I love JT. But like at the same time, it's like this guy's just absolutely losing his mind over this. It was really bizarre. And then of course Carroll ended up having a good game anyway after that. But and Corbin Carroll was kind of confused. Yeah, he was. Yeah, like him and Cody like were on first base, and like Corbin Carroll, he was like, I have no idea like what he's mad about. Like it's just like, yeah, I got hit again, but in that spot too. I mean, there's no guys on. I mean, in that spot, especially when we're winning, that's like in that spot, like you're not going to hit the guy. Like you're not hitting that guy in the second at bat. Like okay, the first one, like of course not, and the second one, okay, it was another bad pitch inside, but when Blake Snell was allowed to have control issues, against Bryce Harper, that was fine. So this was fine too, and he was fine. So everybody was fine. The key word, fine. How many times did I say fine right there? Probably 10, but absolutely just kind of crazy that happened last night, that he was that heated over that. But and of course, but let's highlight, I saw, and also I had another fun stat since I like my stats so much. I saw another great stat today about the best catcher in baseball still, who is about to get very, very hot. I think he is ready to go on his run. And I think last night, this was the game that is going to kick off a very nice stretch here for JT Realmuto. He became just only the 17th catcher in MLB history to hit for the cycle. So like when you think about like, okay, the cycles are rare to begin with, like we don't see them very often, but like in terms of the catcher, that was the thing like that really makes you like stand out. Like, and he's the first catcher since 2011. So he's the first catcher in 12 years to hit for the cycle as well. Like that's very rare for a catcher to hit for the cycle in Major League Baseball. So that's like very impressive for JT, and what an absolute performance. I was watching it, and me and Cole actually, and my buddies were watching it, and we were going back and forth. But when we saw the double there in the ninth last night. That was absolutely great, man. That was just a perfect hit. That was almost got out too. I think at Citizens Bank Park, that might have been an inside the park home run, honestly, with the way that would have probably bounced off the wall there. But just JT completely locked in last night. He's gonna. We need him to continue that, right? Like this is the time of the year that JT usually gets going. He usually gets going June, July. Like that's when he starts heating up, and August is usually his best month. So that's really what we need to see from JT right now. Like that was a great sign. First game down in the desert against the Diamondbacks. This is a big series, obviously. First place team out in the West right now, ahead of the Dodgers. Like who thought that going into this point? Even though the Dodgers obviously lost a lot after last offseason. I was at the game on Sunday with my dad, and just look at the Dodgers team. Like Jason Hayward starting in center field for them. It's like that's a big downgrade, isn't that? Like and like. I forget who was starting for shortstop. It was like Rojas, I think. Yeah, and like funny, of course, Trea, who hasn't played like he was last year on that team. But yeah, definitely a lot of downgrading on the Dodgers. So they're not as good, but with the Diamondbacks, a lot of young talent. Yeah, a lot of young talent on that team. Obviously with Corbin Carroll, Pavin Smith, another guy. They have a really good young team signed for a while now. Obviously Corbin Carroll got locked up this offseason. What a great genius move that's looking like by the Diamondbacks, because he's looking like an absolute future superstar in the league. And so we're going to have to deal with that again tonight. And they have that speed. We're going to have to deal with that tonight. So, but at least we got Zack Wheeler on the mound tonight. So, coming off his last start, where definitely one of his better starts was obviously the no hit bid that was ended in the eighth inning. But Zack Wheeler, absolutely phenomenal. Been pitching phenomenal in some starts, but he's starting to figure it out. Obviously, if you ignore that Nationals game, right? Like for the most part, Zack Wheeler, he's been pitching well recently. Him, Ranger, and Tejan they're really you're starting to see them have these games where it's like, okay, they're starting to figure it out, right? Like you're starting to see, like, and especially like when Zack Wheeler, if his fastball is pumping and he's locating that fastball, he can beat any team. He can beat any lineup. Like that's how good Zack Wheeler is. Like when his fastball's on and like he can locate that pitch like inside outside. I mean, he can he can beat any lineup. That's why like Wheeler, like that dude's our ace. Like, but yeah. So let me see. Anyway, yeah. Sorry, just looking at comments here. But yeah, so Zack Wheeler, like when he gets on like that, like that's our ace right there, right? And like, so let me see here. I was just gonna read. Oh yeah, so like speaking of JT, right? This JT stat like just absolutely blew my mind last night. So JT last night, right? Hit for the cycle, drew a walk, scored 3 runs, and drove in 3 runs. No other MLB player in MLB history has done all that, and their team loses the game. MLB players were 21-0 when doing all that in a game before today, since the RBI became official stat in 1920. So since 1920, yeah. So, that's goes back to the 5th starter spot, right? Like that's because of that right there, and that's just classic Phillies pitching futility that ruins an otherwise should have been great night. And obviously the Cody Clemens almost home run really just took the wind out of everybody's sails there at the end. And so that just ruined last night's feeling of JT's incredible performance, because it really was an incredible performance that he had last night. But so also the one thing I wanted to highlight too, obviously with the game last night. So going into the game last night, right? Notice about the lineup, right? Notice anything about the lineup that really kind of caught my eye is the bottom third of the lineup. When you have Dalton Guthrie, Edmundo Sosa, who I do like Edmundo Sosa, and my God, the other guy. But you have Cody Clemens and Bryson Stott on the bench, right? Like that's the thing that just Cody Clemens, Bryson Stott being out last night, right? Bryson Stott being out last night. In the first game of the series against a first place team, when you have your 5th, when you're having your bullpen game out there, right? You decide to hit arguably the second best hitter on the team right now, and that's Bryson Stott right now for the Phillies. Like obviously Nick Castellanos has been the Phillies' best player this season, no question, right at this point. But Bryson Stott has probably been the Phillies' second best hitter up until this point right now. And Bryson Stott right now, he's second on the team in hits behind Nick, basically second in most on base and average, second behind Nick on the team. So he's got 75 hits this year right now. A lot of them singles, obviously. Like Bryce, like I don't think he's ever going to be a home run guy, right? Like he's never going to. At this point, he's still young, obviously, but like Bryson Stott, I don't think he's not going to be a Chase Utley, right? He's not going to have the power that Chase Utley did. Like he's not going to be a guy that can get 25, 30 home runs a year. Like that's just not who I think he's going to be. I mean, I think at some point he's a guy that can push 20 home runs, but right now, like at this point, like Bryson Stott is, I think, a guy that is perfectly in his role with the Phillies right now, right? Like playing second base, playing great second base, allowing him to not have to have the pressure of being shortstop, right? Because that does come with a lot of more pressure than being a second baseman. You're always looking at the shortstop more than the second baseman, and allowing him to be the young guy on second base and to be able to learn and play with Trea, and eventually, who knows? I mean, they can always maybe down the line, Trea goes to second and Bryson goes to short, as Trea gets older, like who knows? So just to be able to have that combo right there in the middle again, that's going to be great for the Phillies going forward, especially defensively. Like once Trea, like I say, Trea is going to start figuring it out. He's slowly starting to figure it out. So don't everyone calm down about Trea. He will figure it out. He's the guy I am not worried about on this team. So just give him time still. But with Bryson Stott there on second base, like this guy needs to continue to play every day. Like he's a homegrown guy. He's 25 years old. Like he plays an infield position, and he's a guy who has been one of your most consistent hitters, but been your second most consistent hitter on this team, where consistency is very hard to come by when it comes to the Phillies, is it not? So Bryson right now, he's also tied for first on the team with 9 steals right now. Also had a great, very, very ballsy stolen base last night against the Diamondbacks in the 9th inning there after he got that RBI single after coming in. So, big hit after getting JT. And I was like, I thought, like, JT gets the cycle and they're going to strand him here and lose 9-7. I'm like, I mean, this team, I was like, you got to be kidding me. But Bryson Stott, I'm like, second best hitter on the team right now. Guy like Bryson Stott is a guy, like, when he comes up, I'm confident that he's at least going to do something productive, right? Like he's a guy I'm not worried about. Like he's not like a Schwarber where I'm just know he's going to strike out or pop out, 8 out of 10 times, and maybe get that home run. Like I'm just waiting for that home run because that's all really that he's going to do. But Bryson Stott, like he's a single machine, but at least this guy, he's doing his job. He's getting on base. And that is why we will come back to after June. That's like I said, I won't talk about Schwarber June at leadoff. I will leave it for the rest of June, but we all know who needs to be in the leadoff spot for the Phillies going forward after June. And I'm getting a little tired of this crap that, with Rob Thompson and, being this stubborn with the lineup. So we all know who needs to be in the lineup spot, leadoff spot, and that's Bryson Stott. So at some point, we're going to have to make that move because and he's also top 10 in the league in multi-hit games. He's hitting 316 over his last 30 days. That's and also think about this too with Bryson Stott. You look back to where he was to start last season. Like Bryson couldn't even hit the ball last year. He had that walk-off home run right early in the year, but like that was it basically. Like he struggled mightily to start his career, but he eventually started to find his groove throughout the rest of the season, had a way better second half, but he's a different player right now to start this year. I mean, this guy looks like he's hitting like a veteran right now. Like that's what Bryson Stott's doing. So he's a guy that you can rely on. And that's a guy that needs to be playing every single day. Like he's young, like Cal Ripken Jr. played 2,631 consecutive 2,000 games, in a row. So 2,131 was the one he broke. So I think it was 2,632. Quote me on that, somebody, if you want to quote me on that stat. But so like there's no excuse for these guys to be sitting out on like games, especially like I said, when you're going into a game against a first place team and you're starting the bullpen game. Like you need to have your best players out there every single time. And Bryson Stott right now is one of the best players on the Phillies. Like this is a guy that needs to be out there, and we can't continue to keep having this problem every 5th start for this, when we have this bullpen crap. So this is something the Phillies really, really, really need to figure out here. There's things the Phillies can do. Like that's the thing. Like I think a lot of the Phillies issues, like so many of it come in house, right? Like like we're going to talk, I'm going to get to the Aaron Nola and the trade deadline next, but like at this point, like the Phillies have a lot of issues, like internally, like that these guys, like we know that they can do it, right? I'm sounding like a broken record here every week, but like we have the guys, we have the talent, like we have the talent to be able to win these games, to be able to go on these win streaks, like to be able to be a consistent team. We have the talent to be consistent. It's just for some reason we have never been able to put it together here. Basically, the entire time Bryce has been here, right? Like, I mean, since Bryce has been here, it's been basically a seesaw the entire time. So, you know, at some point the Phillies going to have to. It's going to have to. The players are going to have to be the ones that do it, right? Like and it falls on the pitching mostly, right? Like the offense is eventually going to hit. Like you're starting to see the offense hit, right? Like winning that game against the Sunday game, winning that against the Dodgers, that was a huge series win, right? And somebody also I want to highlight for the Phillies right now. And speaking of that Dodgers game, who I really liked was Trea Walker. Trea Walker, you know, probably had one of the worst starts to Phillies career for pitching I've seen in a while. Anytime I watched him, that guy could not throw a strike, and evidenced by how his start was to start the year. But Trea Walker has been on an absolute. He's been not an absolute terror, but he's been pitching very well over the past few weeks. So, the Phillies have won 6 of his last 8 starts. And in his last 28 innings, his ERA is 1.93. So you're starting to see the turnaround with Walker, right? Like that was a big question, right? Like that was kind of a little surprise when the Phillies, I think, signed Trea Walker in this offseason, right? Like you knew the Phillies were going to go after another starting pitch, and we needed another guy. With Kyle Gibson leaving, it's like you needed to upgrade, and Zach Eflin leaving, who starting to miss that guy a little bit right now. But of course he got the he started drinking whatever the Tampa Bay Ray pitcher's drink down there, and now he's an ace. So whatever they do down there, still need to investigate Tampa Rays and their pitching, like what they do to those guys down there to just make any guy they get just into just like a great pitcher. I mean, that's just shout out to the Rays again. I mean, it's just incredible what they do, but I would love to know what they do down there. Still haven't figured it out. That will require an investigation at some point. But yeah, just going into this point right now with Trea Walker, we need him to continue to pitch the way he's pitching right now, right? And like he's been that guy, and like I was at the game, like he wanted to stay in the 5th. He wanted to stay in that game. He thought he was going to get another inning because it was only 5 innings, like, and he had 83 pitches, right? Like, and just imagine, just like think for a second, like imagine the Phillies like back in the day, right? Like imagine pulling a Halladay or a Cliff Lee or a Hamels or an Oswalt or like any of those guys. Imagine pulling your starter after 83 pitches. Like, just imagine that, right? Like, it's just like 10 years ago, that would have been unheard of, and the manager would have got absolutely ripped for doing something like that. But nowadays, that's the norm, right? Like, it's all about. And then the thing I saw what Rob said after the game about that, right? He talked about because Trea Walker, he asked him 3 times. He's like, why? Like, I was like, come on, give me like one more inning. He was like, I can go 6. Like, you got to be kidding me. I only have 83 pitches, and Rob said that he wanted to get the bullpen some work, and I don't know why, because the bullpen gets plenty of work based on how this team pitches. So I don't really understand, like with Rob, like why this continues to be like, oh, just business as usual, and like we're gonna continue to try and figure it out. And it's just like the even keel part is starting to get to me a little bit with Rob, like that it is, because at some point, like you got to start lighting a fire on these guys, and that falls on the manager sometimes, right? Like that has to be him. Like that was the great thing about Charlie Manuel. Oh, the best manager of my lifetime for any of Philly team that I've watched. But he just knew when to be, the player coach, or he knew when to give the tough love. He knew when to have to be like, to actually look at the guy in the eye and be serious and be like, like, you got to pick it up. Like, this isn't what you're doing right now is not acceptable. And like, I can pat you on the back, and say it's going to be okay. And like, we're going to figure it out and all blah, blah, blah. But at some point it's just like, when you get out there, it's like, dude, get mad and like figure it out. Like, this is your job. Like, you're getting paid to do this. And this inconsistency can't happen. I mean, there's too much talent on this team to consistently be inconsistent like this every single year. So let's see if the Phillies can continue to get good outings from their starting pitchers. Like, that's what we need to see. Like, and with Ranger Suarez, his last 3 starts, we're starting to see looking like Ranger. He's starting to come back. He's starting to play a lot better. Zack Wheeler, obviously, let's hope he can put another good start again tonight, coming off, obviously, a couple good starts and also, bad one mixed in there as well. So, let's see if the Phillies can figure it out here, going forward, what they can do. With the starting pitching, need to get those innings, need to get at least 5-6 innings, because you can't have the bullpen continually going out there this early. They're not built to do it. And the Phillies, this bullpen is not built to do it, like I said. So, and we all see it, and this, evidenced by these performances we're going to keep getting, and it's going to be a weekly reminder. So until then, literally, we're going to have to. I could be talking about it every single week going forward until it gets fixed, because we're going to have one of these games every single week. So, yeah, let's not have this continue with the Phillies. Like, we have options, we have things that available in-house, like with the talent. Like, we got to figure this out. But something we do have to start thinking about, at least the Phillies have to start thinking about, is Aaron Nola. And that is the big thing I want to get to tonight, is Aaron Nola, right? So I think we've talked about Aaron Nola so much over the last couple of years with Phillies fans. I mean, one year it's we love him. The next year we absolutely can't stand him. It's one start, he looks like he's an ace. He's great. And the next start, it's like, my God, Aaron Nola did it again. We got the lead. And then the fifth inning, absolute meltdown ensues. And then we lose. And that's been the thing with Aaron Nola, right? Like, that, it's just been absolutely baffling. And like, the thing is, like, with Aaron Nola, it's like we've been going back and forth with, especially with Philly fans, I feel like, for the last, basically his entire career, ever since basically 2018 and then 19 happened. Like, is he an ace, right? And one year, like last year, you're thinking, okay, yes, he can be that guy again. Yes, he is that guy again. He's finally turned the corner. He's putting it together. Like, this is the guy he can be. And we know, like, you see what that guy can be when he is on. I mean, the strikeout numbers are there for Aaron Nola. He's been unhittable at times for the Phillies. And let me pull the stats up. Hold on. Let me see. I had him. There we go. Get him back to me. Hold on. Sorry about that. Let's see. Oh, sorry. It was loaded. I was going to read the stats, and then now it's, oh, gosh. I was doing so well. Okay. You know what? I'll just go to this one. Hold on. Stand by. Technical difficulties. Oh, good. That one's going to. Okay. Oh, there it is. Got it. Thank goodness. All right. I got all these tabs open, man. I'll tell you. It's like I got like 10 tabs open going back and forth. It is a lot of back and forth. So, but yeah, with Aaron Nola, right? Like, 4.6 ERA right now. The one thing I saw too is, like, he's given the big thing I was talking to my buddy Cole today as well. He was saying he sent the stat, and Cole and Chris, my buddies, that we were talking about the Phillies today, and Aaron Nola has given up a home run in 10 straight starts, which is now the second longest streak ever in Phillies history, behind Randy Wolf, who had 12 in a row. So for Aaron Nola, like, that's basically been the story of his career, right? Like, he always makes you think he's always going to be, like, he always just gets real close to being an ace, and then all of a sudden just blows it right at the end, right? That's been the epitome of his career, right? And we've seen it on full display throughout the entire course of this season right now. I mean, one start he'll be great against the Astros, and the next start he's just absolutely getting lit up against, like, the Cubs or something like that, right? And like, even the Dodgers game where we got shut out on Saturday, like his last start, like, obviously he didn't pitch great in that whole pitch clock thing. But I was reading about something about that with the pitch clock thing with Aaron Nola, and it's starting to become an interesting thing. And Larry Bowe even was saying it earlier on in the year. I was reading today too, that he thinks that the pitch clock is really affecting Aaron Nola, because he was saying that Aaron Nola is a guy that likes to, take the time, like, he likes to rub the baseball, like, collect his thoughts, like, step back, like, and have that break. Like, some pitchers really like to have that step back, and like, that's what you're seeing. I think a lot, like Sandy Alcantara, one guy, for example, he's a guy that, like, in between batters, like, really likes to have his routine, like, and do his thing. But now, like, with the speed up, like, he's been struggling mightily this year. His ERA has been like around 5.2. Like, and he's not even, he looks nothing like the Cy Young guy that he was last year. And you're seeing that through across the league with a lot of these pitchers, and Aaron Nola is no exception right now. And across his numbers. But the real thing with Aaron Nola, so he's got a 4.6 ERA this year, right? Like, but over his last 10 starts, his ERA, like, where he's given up those 10 home runs, but guys are batting like 202 average, like off him, right? But he's given up those 10 home runs. Like, so guys are not hitting a lot. Guys are not getting a lot of hits off him, but those home runs every time. And the thing that's killing him are the walks at the worst times, and then the home runs. Like, he's given up those walks, hit combos. Like, it seems like almost every single time. And it's one of those things that a lot of these guys, I think, are still trying to figure out how to adjust to the pitch clock. And I think Aaron Nola, unfortunately, is one of those guys that is really struggling. Like, obviously, they're not going to come out and say that. And I think a lot of guys really don't want to come out and say that, because it's, going to make it, it looks like it's going to be an excuse on their part, right? Like, that's what it's going to be. Yeah, 2019, Nola, exactly, right? Like, that was the thing. Like, 2018, we thought he was going to be, he was top 3 Cy Young guy, and the next year, not even close. So, and that's what we got last year, right? We thought like, oh, he's back, like, top 10 Cy Young guy again, over 200 innings, and then this year, just not even close. So, but that's right. That's been the entire antithesis of Aaron Nola's career. So, and the pitch clock, I think, and that's what we're going to see, right? I think the Phillies were really smart. Obviously, the Phillies were really smart and probably recognizing that, with this pitch clock coming in this year, like, some guys, like, I think that was really a good, I think that was something that really the Phillies, like, that's something that we didn't really talk about, why the Phillies didn't sign Aaron Nola, but I'm starting to think that maybe might be a reason why now, is that when you look at it, like, the Phillies, like, we don't know how these guys are going to react to the pitch clock. Like, it's a big unknown, right? Like, and some guys are going to obviously do well with it. Some guys are not going to do well with it. And I think a big thing was, if Aaron Nola, the early reports were like, he wasn't right. It came like all the way down to basically spring training. It did, like, it was, we thought we were going to sign him, and then we didn't. Then once we cut off talks, and I think a lot of people were kind of surprised that we didn't sign him. But at the same time, like, I wasn't, because it's like, you still need to see how a lot of these guys are going to react. And the Phillies, like, obviously, if he pitches well, then, he signed a team-friendly deal last time. If he wants to stay in Philly, I think Aaron Nola would be one of those guys. Like, he's and he said it before, he's like, he's not one of those guys about the money. And I actually do believe him. He does seem like one of those guys who's just like, he just seems like a very, very just laid-back guy, and just, likes to play baseball. That's just what he seems. So, and if that's the case, I think the Phillies would have been able to have a better chance to find a way to wait, obviously, after this year and get a deal done for him. But I don't think that's the case anymore, because with not having a fifth starter right now, and if we're not going to be bringing up anybody from the minor leagues anytime soon, okay, like, well, with the trade deadline coming up, we're not at 500 even yet. Like, is it time to start thinking about trading Aaron Nola? Like, and that's what I want to know, because, like, this is something the Phillies have to really strongly consider. Now, obviously on paper, like, okay, if the return that you could potentially get for an Aaron Nola is high enough, especially for a contending team. Like, for a contending team right now, like, that's a team that, like, if you can get an Aaron Nola and, before, like, going into a pennant race, like, and, you need a starter like that. I mean, the Phillies could definitely get a haul from some team, like a desperate team, to try and get it, like, especially if they need a frontline, like, postseason caliber starter, like, to be available. Like, the Phillies, that could be, like, the Phillies, at least you have to think about that, right? Because that could be a very interesting, like, there would be some teams that would want to get a return. There would be some teams that would want Aaron Nola, and the Phillies would definitely be able to get a return for Aaron Nola, even though he is going to be a free agent this offseason. That's obviously going to be something to consider. I still think it's, if you get to that point of that trade deadline, like, there's going to be a team of it, like that. If Aaron Nola is the missing piece, like, from their rotation, that's going to put them ahead, going into the playoff race. That's something a team is going to have to consider, because there isn't an Aaron Nola. There isn't going to be an Aaron Nola and another type of Aaron Nola pitcher available. There's just not. So that's definitely something that the Phillies really have to consider, right? And what could they get for an Aaron Nola, right? Like, that's the big question, right? And that's the thing. I'm struggling myself with that. And I, just looking at a lot of options and seeing, like, okay, what could the Phillies potentially get in a return for Aaron Nola? Like, draft picks, like, at this point, like, yes, it's great. But at this point, like, the Phillies are trying to win now. Like, we need the talent now, right? So you would have to get an actual pitcher in return for Aaron Nola. And the question is, well, really there's no Aaron Nola available, then like, of course, you're not going to get the return that you expect for Aaron Nola, right? And and I definitely see that because realistically, right, you're not going to get the return. But one situation that I'm definitely going to keep an eye on with Aaron Nola right now and going forward is there's two guys actually, and especially if these teams can continue to struggle, and that's and that's pretty good, bud, because how about that Stroman? Yes, that is one of those guys actually. So Marcus Stroman and the other guy Shane Bieber from the Cleveland Indians too. Both of those guys definitely, would represent like guys that have experience, you know what I mean? And like obviously Bieber has won a Cy Young, won it during the COVID year, but has been an absolute, all-star top line pitcher. Has had some injury issues the last 2 years, obviously, but still 28 years old. And obviously Cleveland is a team that is definitely not going to want to pay Shane Bieber. They're also not a team that would not want to pay Aaron Nola. So like the Phillies are probably going to have to get pretty creative if they wanted to trade Aaron Nola. And like and I'll just make this clear. Let me just make this clear, I guess then, right? Like I don't expect the Phillies to trade Aaron Nola. Like I definitely do not expect them to trade Aaron Nola. But at the same time, though, it's not exactly like a smart decision if they don't trade Aaron Nola, because if you don't trade Aaron Nola, right, and you hang on to him, and regardless of how the Phillies finish this year, like whether we win a World Series or not, but we will. But if we don't, like, like it doesn't matter if we do or don't. Aaron Nola is going to be a free agent, right? And he's going to be wanting probably, I don't know. I mean, he's going to be wanting 150. He's going to be like Carlos Rodon, right? Who hasn't even pitched a game for the Yankees yet. He signed a 7-year, 8-year, $162 million deal this offseason, right? Like Aaron Nola is going to want that. Aaron Nola is going to want that type of deal. Like, and are you as a team going to be willing to commit 7 to 8 years to Aaron Nola, especially as he's going into his 30s? That's not a good baseball decision. That's not a smart baseball decision, honestly. So for the Phillies, it's that's something like, okay, well, like obviously keeping Aaron Nola this year obviously is the best decision for this year, of course. Like that gives the Phillies the best chance to win, and no doubt. But going forward though, next year, and if he walks for nothing, the Phillies better have a plan in place in order to replace Nola, because you can't just let a guy like that walk and then just expect, an Andrew Painter to come in next year and to be like Aaron Nola, especially if he's coming off, a pretty serious arm injury here, or if, it's going to require surgery at some point. We're just going to shut him down this year, which I think at some point they're just going to have to, because I don't even know why if he's hurt, I don't even know why we're wasting time with this crap right now. Especially just put him to next year, because if Aaron Nola is going to be gone, we need Andrew Painter completely ready to go for next year, because he's going to have to be starting next year. Like, right. Like Andrew Painter's going to have to be taken over next year for Aaron Nola. Like that would have to be the plan, right? Like that's how, like if they were not willing to sign Aaron Nola this offseason, like the Phillies, then I feel like they have to be feeling that strongly about Andrew Painter, where they said, okay, let's see how it goes. If he doesn't do good, we can always bring him back cheap. And like that's the other thing, like we can always bring back Aaron Nola for cheap too. Like that's the thing. If he doesn't have a good season, if he doesn't have a good rest of the season, where it's kind of like his ERA is around 4, but like hopefully he gets good around when we need him to, around August, September, during the pennant race. Like that's really when we're going to need him the most. Let him figure it out and then hopefully get good, by the end of the season. But of course, if he does pitch good at the end of the season, then his value is just going to go skyrocketing, because he's pitching good, when he needs to. So yeah, there's so many variables with Aaron Nola, but at the same time, like the Phillies have to be thinking about trading Aaron Nola at this point at the deadline. But the question is, like, what can they really get for him that would help them this year? Like they could get things that could help them for the future, no question about it. But like, obviously the Phillies are built to win now. Like we're trying to win this thing now. And that's where the thoughts got to be. Yeah. Julio Urias, yes, he is another big guy available. He's probably, him. Well, obviously, we know the big one available this offseason coming up. But wouldn't that be something? But yeah, Julio Urias, he's definitely a good option. Obviously, a Dodger, so postseason, success every season. So knows what it takes to win. He's going to be he's 25 years old. He'll be available. Yeah, so there's going to be, and of course, Ohtani, it will be available in the off season. So but after those three, this coming off season, there's a big drop off in starting pitching available. It's going to be Ohtani, Nola, and Urias. Those are your top three this off season. Of course, Ohtani is going to, if you got to be even realistic of what, you know what that's going to cost. So if you're not even, realistically thinking about that, your two choices, the majority of teams is going to be Aaron Nola and Julio will be the two biggest starters available this offseason. Yeah, Bucky Getter. Thank you, Bucky Getter. I appreciate it. Go Sixers. Shout out to Nick Nurse. Went from the doctor to a nurse, but I do like the nurse better. So that hopefully that'll go well for the Sixers. But that's an interesting. Urias, Wheeler, Suarez, Painter, Walker. I like the sound of that. I surely like the sound of that. I mean, that sounds pretty damn good, right? Urias, Wheeler is still the ace, but Wheeler, Urias, Suarez, Painter, Walker, damn good top five right there. That's pretty good. Bucket getter, good stuff right there, bud. Yeah, I like that a lot. So there you go, right? That's something to think about, and especially and that's the big thing. Andrew Painter is the big domino with Aaron Nola, right? And that's the thing where I'm struggling with right now with this Aaron Nola thing. I think I would be a little more willing to trade him I would be more willing to trade Aaron Nola if Andrew Painter was pitching right now, right? I think a lot of people would be thinking a little differently right now if Andrew Painter was actually pitching and performing right now. Then if Aaron Nola was still struggling like this, okay, that at least would make it a lot easier to entertain the idea, because at least you have the replacement already in house, right? You already have the guy that's going to take over, but then of course you get, nice return, hopefully a big return, get, pitcher obviously to replace Nola, but then for the future now Painter's going to take over going forward. But for this year, that's not the best course of action right now, obviously, because Painter is not playing. So for the Phillies, the best course of action would be to keep Nola at this point right now, because he does give us the best chance to win, because we really are struggling so badly with our starting pitching. Who's available, right? Who's available that's better that we could possibly get for Aaron Nola? Not many, not really realistically, but yeah, that Julio Urias one, that's a good idea. That one I like. That one I like going into next. That's going to be that's a good guy to keep an eye of. Another lefty pitcher, obviously. So that's another good guy to have with him and Suarez, two lefties in the starting. That would be nice. Yeah, I like that idea there. So that's definitely one to start thinking about there. But wow, 7:52 already. That's good though. I got pretty good into the Aaron Nola. I thought I was going to go too late, not get into the Aaron Nola stuff, but I'm glad I did. But so that with Aaron Nola, it's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough. But let's put it this way to Aaron Nola, you got to start pitching better, bud. At some point, he keeps making the same mistakes over and over again, right? It's always that home run later on in the games, the fourth or fifth inning. That's right. That's when it always goes wrong for him. It's always he's going through, he goes through the first 3-4 innings, he gets through the lineup, and then the next, you just know it's going to happen. Every time you're watching Aaron Nola start, it's just you're just waiting for the inevitable F up, right? That, you just know it's coming. So he's got to get back to just also Aaron Nola, he's not the type of guy that, at least from just watching him when he pitches, he's not the type of guy that is going to get really fired. He's not a guy that shows a lot of emotion, right? But at some point, I think he needs to unlock that killer instinct inside himself. That's what you got to be on the mound sometimes, man. You got to be the ace. You got to be the ace on the hill, and you got to be the killer out there. You got to be the one that goes out there and just takes the game into your hands, it's yours. And Aaron Nola just seems he just doesn't have that about him. He just seems too much of the time, it's just all right, just go with the flow. And it's just it's whatever. So at some point we need Aaron Nola to unlock that killer instinct inside of him, because that's why and Dave, that's why he's not signed. Dave knows he's seen it. He's been around Aaron Nola, and he's been around a lot of great talent and has acquired a lot of great talent to know if this guy's worth it or not. And right now, Dave not signing Aaron Nola tells me all I need to know. That tells me what I need to know right there. And then of course the performance has really told me what I need to know. So the Phillies are they're in a really tough spot with it. There's really no answer with it, right? But it's going to be interesting because and really it falls into Aaron Nola's hands, right? It all falls onto Aaron Nola's hands. It's up to him how this goes. That's the thing. Like, the Phillies, like we are waiting for Aaron Nola to start pitching like the way he's supposed to be pitching, the way that we know he can pitch, like the way that we've seen him pitch, like. So let's give him a little more time, but there's really not much time. Like we need this now, like, because until we get that fifth starter spots figured out, and Lord only knows what the Phillies are looking at to do with that. We really need Aaron Nola to start pitching better, because it looks like Wheeler, it looks like Suarez, and it looks like Tejan. They're starting to figure it out. They're obviously starting to have, like I said, have more consistent starts over the course of the last month, over the last couple of weeks. So, but Aaron Nola has just, every start, one start good, one start bad, like clockwork. So, you can't sustain that, and that's the Phillies in a nutshell, right? Like, you can't win that way. You can't expect to be a winning franchise that way. And until he figures it out, we're going to have to ask that question. That question is only going to get louder as we go into the summer here. So, but it's going to be an interesting summer for the Phillies, man. A lot to figure out. And I mean, it's in their hands, right? It's in the players' hands, and it's up to them. And we know they can do it. And it's every year we got to be saying the same damn thing of, it's like eventually they're going to turn around, and they're eventually going to have to play consistent, because this is what we're going to get. So, but 5 minutes left. Pretty good so far. I thought that was pretty darn good. So, all right. And then let's get to my finishing of the fantasy predictions for this week. All right, so honestly, been doing pretty good with the fantasy predictions. Shout out to my buddy Cole for helping me out with the fantasy predictions. We had a pretty good week last week again, and definitely got some good guys for you guys this week as well. And of course, I'm going to start off with the one guy. That's right, other side. Representing our fighting Phils is JT Realmuto. I'm fully certain, like last night's game for JT, right, and for that cycle, that's the turning point game for JT. Like, we saw it last year, right after. Remember when he couldn't go up to Toronto, and then after they came back after that Toronto series, he was one of our best players. He was probably our best player for the rest of the year, honestly, last year, JT. So, like, that's what I'm expecting from JT right now. Like, that was the game last night, hitting it to all parts of the field last night, driving the ball. Looked like he could have had three home runs, with all those extra base hits last night, especially that double at the end, just missed being a home run. So, I'm probably glad he probably wished it was a home run. So, but he got the cycle, great for him. But that's the type of game that's going to get him jump started. And I would get in on him now. He's very cheap, especially for catchers right now. Another guy, definitely, I think and especially I'll keep it in that series right now. Another guy that he's expensive, but this guy is must start right now. It's Corbin Carroll. This guy is must start right now. Top 5. He's 4th overall in fantasy across the entire MLB this year right now. This is a guy who is consistently stealing bases. He's consistently getting multi-hit games. He is the number 1 player in fantasy over the last 2 weeks. Corbin Carroll is, and over the last week. So over the last week and over the last 2 weeks, Corbin Carroll, number 1 player in fantasy. This is a guy that at this point, I mean, he's must start. I mean, 2 for 3. He got hit by the pitch. Got hit by 2 pitches last night, and he responds with a triple single, run, and stolen base. So this is a guy that is just, he does it all. And the speed, and like when you have speed like that, and of course, right before the Phillies series this past weekend, he had that grand slam, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, 3 for 5 against the Detroit Tigers. He's been absolutely lights out this season. Top 5 in stolen bases as well right now. He's got 19 on the season. So this guy's just going to give you all around production, and he's giving it to you every game almost. He's always doing something. So the price is there, but Corbin Carroll, definitely a guy to keep an eye on. And just, he's basically must start at this point, I think. And let me pull up. No, come back to me. And another guy who was one of the top prospects going into this offseason, number 1 prospect actually going into this offseason, Gunnar Henderson, started off very slow in the Baltimore Orioles to start the year. compared to what Corbin Carroll and now Eli De La Cruz and like some of these other rookies are getting, and Josh Jung and some of these other rookies have been getting the attention. But Gunnar Henderson right now, for obviously a great team in the Orioles, who I wish were in the AL Central just so they could just be in the just have a division title because they deserve it so much. Because obviously the Rays, best team in baseball, but yeah, they it's a shame for the for the AL Central being as bad as they are. But Gunnar Henderson moved back up to lead off. He has been absolutely on fire right now. Batting 10, he's 10 for 19 over the last week, 3 home runs, 6 RBIs, back up to the leadoff spot. 10 RBIs, 4 home runs in the last 2 weeks, batting 526 in his last week. So he's moved back up to leadoff. So he's going to be getting the most at bats. That's a guy you want to be starting as well. And that takes me right to the end. So there's my top 3. Another pitcher also, Hunter Brown from the Astros, need a starter this week. Starters are very expensive, but Hunter Brown going against Washington and Detroit, I believe. So great matchups for him. But thank you guys. Great show. Great time tonight. Let's go Phils tonight. Zack Wheeler rocking the bump, our ace. And can't wait to see you guys next week. And hope you guys have a great week. And this is Matt from the Strike Zone. Take care, guys.